Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining in today. If you caught my last two sessions, you would have heard me talk all about chocolate, how it's made and grown, where it comes from, and how to taste it. And today I'm going to show you how to make raw chocolate bars at home. Now, if you've ever bought raw chocolate, you may have noticed it's kind of expensive. So hopefully today this will show you how you can make it yourself without having to spend too much money. One thing I wanted to mention about raw chocolate before we begin is that for chocolate to be truly raw, it can't be roasted. So the beans of the cocoa pods cannot be roasted at a high temperature. So this has a couple of implications that you should be aware of. The number one implication is the lack of roasting. It means they won't release the same amount of secondary flavors that a roasted bean could have. So that means raw chocolate will have less flavor than a fully roasted and conched chocolate. The other thing to be aware of is without roasting, which is a valuable part of creating chocolate, you are susceptible to certain microorganisms and mold. Roasting is an essential part of the process to remove mycotoxins from cocoa beans. So if we skip that step, you can potentially be exposed to some toxins which are not good for you. This isn't something that is hugely talked about, but it's something that people are becoming more and more aware of as the raw chocolate industry develops. Today I'm going to show you a safe way to make raw chocolate at home. So while it's not using unroasted beans, it is using a very, very high quality cocoa powder, and we're not processing anything. So hopefully this is your homemade way of making raw chocolate a healthy snack for you and your family at home. So the process for making these is really simple and quick. As long as you have a few key ingredients on hand at home, you can do this in under 20 minutes. I'm going to show you now what ingredients I'm using today. I'm going to use 3 base ingredients, which you should have to make these, and then I'm going to incorporate some different flavors so that you can see what the possibilities are for you at home. Come on! So I'm going to show you now what I'm going to use to make these raw chocolate bars at home. I have cocoa butter here. If you don't have access to cocoa butter or can't find it, you can also use coconut oil. Virgin is best. This is cocoa powder. It's the best quality that you can find. And some raw honey. If you don't have honey, you can use maple syrup or agave syrup, but some kind of natural sugar is best. Once I combine all of these ingredients, I'm going to add, for one of my batches, I have walnuts and prunes. Prunes, walnuts, and dark chocolate are really, really nice together. They're a perfect combination. What you want to look for is prunes that don't have preservatives. I'm going to make another batch with cinnamon, a real vanilla extract, and raw almonds. And one with chili powder, salt, and some cocoa nibs. These are pieces of cocoa bean, real cocoa bean. So this one will be a salty and spicy one. So I've got my cocoa butter here in a small saucepan. I've used equal quantities cocoa butter and cocoa powder. I'm just melting it down on a low heat gradually, and I'm going to let it cool down a little bit as well. It doesn't take too long. Okay. So now my cocoa butter is nice and cool. I'm going to add it to my cocoa powder. And remember, if you can't find cocoa butter, coconut oil is just as good. I've got my honey here. And I'm just going to mix it all together with a whisk. And there we go. So this is equal quantities cocoa butter and cocoa powder and a little bit of natural sweetener. I added about 15% natural sweetener, but this is really to taste, and it depends what you like to have as your level of sweetness. So for example, with 100 grams of cocoa butter or coconut oil and 100 grams of cocoa powder, you would add between 10 and 20 grams of natural sweetener, or more if you'd like. Okay, now I'm going to divide this into my different batches. For my molds, I'm using 2 today. I have this one, a silicone mold that's going to make bars, like a raw chocolate bar, and I had this in my cupboard, which is why I'm using it. Any silicone mold will do, actually. You don't have to have this particular one. And I'm also going to use a silpat. So one of the batches that I do, I'm just going to pour it on this silpat. This is a silicone mat, and if you don't have one of these, you can just use baking paper and a baking tray. So really, you can be very flexible and adaptable. Okay, so for my first batch, I'll just pour some of the mix in a bowl. This is for my prunes and my walnuts. Just mix it all together. And then, super simple, just pour it into the mold that you've chosen. Silicone is really great to work with. These, once they set, they'll just pop right out of the mold. There we go. So for my next batch, I'm chopping up some raw almonds. I'm going to add a little bit of pure vanilla extract and some cinnamon. I love cinnamon. So if you don't, that's fine. You can add another spice or omit it altogether. The vanilla is going to soften it a little bit. Now with the vanilla, just about a teaspoon. That's plenty. Maybe half a teaspoon. And similarly with the cinnamon, half a teaspoon should do. I'm going to pour it into the mold. And I'm going to sprinkle my nuts on top. So now for my last batch, I'm going to add some chili and some salt and some cocoa nibs. This is going to be really powerful, really strong, not really sweet, and definitely not like a candy. But chili and chocolate are a beautiful combination, and so is dark chocolate with salt. So while it might not be sweet, it will taste really good and have a very interesting flavor. And the cocoa nibs will give it a little bit of crunch and texture. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to add my chili powder. A little goes a very long way though. I'm adding about a quarter of a teaspoon. That's plenty. Alright, I'm just going to pour that out onto my mat. And I have here sea salt crystals. I'm going to sprinkle these on the top. And my cocoa nibs. Once this hardens, you can break it up into pieces. You can store this at room temperature if you're using cocoa butter. But I do recommend storing it in the chiller if you're using coconut oil, because coconut oil melts at a much lower temperature than cocoa butter. Cocoa butter is solid at room temperature, but coconut oil is not. So our bars have set. Best way to do it is at room temperature over a couple of hours, or you can pop them in your fridge as well. And if you are using coconut oil, I recommend the fridge. If you're using silicone, these pop out really, really easily. Once they're firm, you just press in the base and it will come out just like this. Beautiful. Put that there. I've got my two types. I have my almond and I have my walnut and prune. And this one is the cocoa nib, sea salt, and chili. It's set nicely, and I'm going to cut it into shards. Okay. Soft. So just to recap, this is what we made today. Out of the same batch, I've done 3 different samples just to show you some possibilities. Everything that I've used today is available in grocery stores, and hopefully you have some of these already in your cupboard. So you don't have to go too far to find what I've used. So to recap, I've got walnut and prune, and remember you can use any nut and any dried fruit. I have raw almond, vanilla, and cinnamon. And this one is our sea salt, chili, and cocoa nib. So that's it for today. Thanks for joining in, and I hope you learned something new. Just remember, if you want to make these at home, you don't need much equipment, and hopefully you can find these ingredients in the supermarket. Just use what you have on hand and bring confidence to your game. Thank you.